Good evening. Good evening. My name is Kim Aldridge, and I serve as head of school here at Wilmington Friends, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this evening, and as well as to invite and welcome our speakers to our campus. Before I start with opening remarks, I want to start in the manner of friends with a moment of silence. Thank you. I'd also want to extend a huge thank you to our College Guidance Office, Lauren Satterfield, Upper School Registrar and College Office Coordinator, Rose Grenade, Associate Director of College Guidance, and Kathleen Martin, Director of College Guidance. And Kathleen is right over here to my right. Kathleen recently received the Rising Star Award from National Association for College Admissions Counseling, NACAC. And it was actually Kathleen's encounter with tonight's speakers that was both the inspiration and vision for tonight's program. I also want to take a moment to thank Todd Tyler, who's providing technical support this evening, and our videographer, Delaney Martin. If you can just join me in a quick round of applause for Shereem Herndon-Brown and Tim Fields, co-authors of the book, The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions, a conversation about education, parenting, and race, are fully committed and I would say all in thinking about the pathway to college admissions for families. They bring a combination of their shared and divergent college experiences to construct an instructional pathway, allowing families benchmarks and considerations to help negotiate the college admissions process. A pathway that will ultimately provide families and students a sense of purpose and guidance, a sense of awareness and self, a sense of voice and agency, and most importantly, to have before them multiple choices for college. Shereem is a dynamic leader, educational strategist, emerging author, and speaker. His experiences in the field are unparalleled. As an educator for over 20 years and an entrepreneur for over a decade, Shereem has counseled many students and families through the often frustrating private school and college, quote, admissions maze. Inspiring and instructional, Shereem connects with anyone who needs an educational plan. His students have attended schools such as Dartmouth, Duke, Emory, Harvard, Stanford, Syracuse, University of Georgia, University of Miami, University of Michigan, University of Pennsylvania, University of Virginia, University of Texas Austin, Vanderbilt, Yale, as well as many others. Before he set out on his purpose-filled assignment, he worked as an admissions officer at Georgetown University, a guidance counselor at 2 high schools. Having worked on both sides of the desk in admissions gives Shereem a perspective that few other counselors have. He aims to assist students and families who do not readily know about this process or have extensive knowledge of the world of college admissions. He clearly has his finger on the pulse of what is most important to families and is consistently strategic in his approach to helping students to have school choices. Shereem also has experience with Quaker schools through Brooklyn Friends School and a graduate of Westtown. He's also a graduate of Wesleyan University with a bachelor's degree in English and a master's of arts degree from the Breadlow School of English at Middlebury College. In 2005, he was selected by the National Association of Independent Schools as an EE Ford Fellow for aspiring heads of school. Additionally, he has served on the Board of Trustees of the Seaman Elementary Charter School in his native Brooklyn, New York. He is a member of the Independent Educational Association and the National Association of College Admissions. He has been quoted in the New York Times, Points North Magazine, and written for Sewanee Magazine as well as Uptown Magazine. Shereem enjoys reading, exercising, traveling, and playing with his wife and 4 children. He is an avid sports fan and a distinguished man of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I'll say it one more time. And a distinguished man of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And to you Qs, let it be known that Kappa acknowledged you on this stage. Tim Fields spent the past 25 years working in various areas of higher education, primarily in enrollment management at Emory University, where he currently serves as the Senior Associate Dean in Undergraduate Admission. In this role, Tim is a member of the leadership team for the recruitment, evaluation, and construction of the freshman class for Emory University, including students who will eventually matriculate to the Goethe Business School and the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing. In addition to his work in enrollment management, Tim has also worked in student affairs, residential life, athletics, and with several federal TRIO programs in 2-year state flagship and private institutions. Beyond his work in higher education, Tim has worked with several nonprofit and community-based organizations that include 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Chicago Scholars, UPS Foundation, Jack Kent Cook, National Merit Corporation, United Negro College Fund, the Gates Foundation, and currently a board member for TDI, Turning Dreams into Reality. He's done contract work with the Division of Family and Children's Services, helping students in foster care gain access to college, as well as other community initiatives. A native of Arlington, Texas, Tim earned a BA in psychology from Morehouse College, MED from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and has completed all doctoral work at Georgia State University. His academic interests include HBCUs, post-secondary access of underrepresented populations, and supporting Black male initiatives. When not working, Tim is a husband, father of twins, and avid runner, traveler, and author. After their formal remarks, Shereem and Tim will have a question and answer session, which will be followed by an opportunity to purchase their book out in the lobby. Please join me in welcoming Shereem and Tim to Wilmington Friends School.
Some point during this, I'm going to take this jacket off. Not quite sure when, but it's hot. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kathleen. My name is Shereem Herndon-Brown, and Ken said a lot of things about me that I often forget, but it sounded really good. We are here tonight to talk about how we can support Black students and families in the college admissions process. And yes, we have a slideshow presentation for you, but what we really want you to grasp is how much we are committed to Black families, to Black students, and the information that we want you to have. For me, this is, in a lot of ways, a homecoming. As Ken said, I went to Westtown School. I graduated in 1992. But before that, I went to Brooklyn Friends School in Brooklyn, New York, and was there for 9 years. So I'm 12 years Quaker educated. And I was joking with them at dinner that I've probably been to more Quaker meetings in my life than I've been to church services. This is important to me right now to be here. Tim knows this. I am an independent school graduate. My children go to the Buller School in Potomac, Maryland, so I'm an independent school parent. And as you'll learn, a lot of the book that we wrote, I wrote for you as independent school people, primarily. Those of you who went to public school, Tim will talk to you. But no, in all seriousness, it means a lot to me that Kathleen extended herself to us so early on in our journey to share the book with you guys, but more importantly, that you came out here tonight, so thank you. We are, above all else, Black parents, Black educators, and we want Black families to understand that the choices, understand their choices, as well as empower them in the college application process to find college admission success. That is our motto, our mission, our mantra, whatever M word you want to use. And our company, burgeoning company, understanding the choices is exactly that. At our core, we are educators and parents. And yes, we have a ton of professional experience in the college admissions world, but we want to make sure that above all else, we aren't parents, we're dads, and we're educators. Ken did a great job of introducing us, so I'm actually going to pass the mic to Tim. I'm going to give Tim a little bit of kudos. Stay right there for a minute. Tim is the Senior Associate Dean at Emory University, one of the most selective institutions in the country. He is also a Morehouse grad. I'm willing to challenge that. I don't think there's another professional at his level at a selective institution that's also an HBCU graduate. So his perspective on admissions and college lived experience as an HBCU grad, Morehouse, if you read the book, we call them the Black Ivies. If you went to something other than Morehouse, Spelman, or Howard, we can tussle later. But the bottom line is that I want to thank you in front of all these people and say, your professional expertise, Senior Associate Dean at Emory, Morehouse grad, brought a lot to the table, and I want to make sure that you are recognized for that.
Thank you very much. And I just want to echo everything that's been said. It is great to be here. We've gone through kind of the formal, introductions, and so here we are. You know all this information. But we had this slide here because that's oftentimes what you hear. Timothy Fields, Senior Associate Dean. Shereem Herndon-Brown, Founder, Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Admission Advice. But that is not who we are. Who we are two individuals who have very different experiences. And as we went about putting together this book, these differences and contrasts really served as a foundation. So as you can see here, he's from New York, I'm from Texas. He's a first-generation student, I'm a fourth-generation student. He went to Wesleyan, a predominantly white institution. I went to Morehouse, an HBCU. And then, obviously you can see all the other differences. We're both twin dads, not listed on here. He uses an Apple, I use a PC. And then the differences go on and on. But one of the things that serves as the foundation is that we want to say blacks aren't a monolith. As we went about writing this book, we bumped heads several times. Me going to public school, not understanding what it was like going to an independent school all his life. Him going to independent school, not understanding when we went to a public school. Me talking about my upbringing being a fourth generation, meaning that college just is going to happen. As early as I can remember, 2 years old, my mom was director of college counseling at University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was the first black director of admission at UMass Amherst. She worked with several TRIO programs, so I don't ever remember not being on a college campus. I can think about all my cousins and brothers and sisters who went to college, where Shereem's perspective was, and he can share that with you, a blue-collar family who sent him to independent school because they wanted something better for their son. And so as we went about this, we wanted to make sure that we provided, a diverse perspectives. And we'll talk about more we went into as far as writing the book, but this was a foundation, our differences, as well, in addition to our professional experiences.
So, one of the great things about our book is that we are out here sharing it. You call it promoting, selling, I'll call it sharing. But please buy the book, you can sell it outside. To our knowledge, there is no other book written by two black professionals in the college admissions canon that's as popular as ours. Right now, it is #1 in Amazon new releases for our education category. And that's important because, no, we're not the first black people in admissions to write books, but we are very clearly out here making sure in 2022 that we push this narrative. Like Tim said, that we're not a monolith, that blacks go to HBCUs, MPWIs, that they go to independent schools and public schools, so on and so forth. So we wanted to make sure that we brought that energy to everyone who wants to hear it of, we need you as families to understand how the college admissions process works in 2022. Tim, let's talk, your big soapbox information gap, go.
So one of the reasons, there were several things that we decided to write this book, but one of the largest is the information gap. Articles written in Forbes a couple years ago, and just, the question is, how do black families and students get information? And only a third of black students and families got information from somebody within their household. That was in contrast to 2/3 of white and other, races and ethnic groups where they got their information. So already there's a disadvantage of who is giving us this information, and then, when they're giving it, from what perspective are they giving this information? So we wanted to narrow that gap. Similar to Shereem said, there hadn't been a book specifically written to that perspective. And then, Shereem, as we've highlighted, went to independent schools all his life. And so in 2020, as we were in this racial awakening in our country with all kinds of different things, George Floyd, the bird watcher, Shereem was at a black alumni meeting at Westtown.
So virtually, the Black at IG movement, those of you familiar with that, what was happening summer 2020 where black students across the country, I believe it began in Atlanta, but it spread quickly, where black students were highlighting their micro and macro aggressions against them that were happening at their schools. And I was disappointed, but not surprised. I'd gone to independent schools all my life, I'd worked in them, but at the time I didn't have a platform like Instagram to share and for it to go viral. So the Black at IG movement and hearing these students talk about what they were going through at these predominantly white independent schools hurt my feelings. And I'll go even further, parent, former student, but there was this underlying thread about college counseling. How many of them felt underserved by the college counseling offices. How they went into the college counseling office saying, I want to go to this school, and their college counselor was saying, yeah, not so much. Or how they're saying, you know, my college counselor won't make time to be with my parents who can't, you know, take off in the middle of the day. And I knew that story because it was mine. I knew that story because I worked in independent schools. So that Black NIG movement prompted me to call Tim. Westtown School, my alma mater, was having a Black Westtown Alumni Council group meeting that night online. I reluctantly, and I needed to really stress this, called Tim, who I know for 10 years, and I said, please don't pick up the phone. Because I wanted to write a book, but if Tim picks up the phone, now I gotta write it, right? If he doesn't pick up, I can tell it's never happened. But I knew burning in my soul, I have to address this college counseling stuff at independent schools. That's where it started. And this idiot picked up the phone. And I said, Tim, we should write a book about college counseling. Okay, let's do it. And now it's out there in the world. And right then and there, he held us accountable to producing something that is not solely for independent school families, even though I think that was his genesis, but really wanted to speak to not being a monolith. What's happening in college admissions now? Many of our friends were asking us, you know, who have kids in high school, what should we be doing? And we thought many of them were coming to the process later than we wanted them to. So we wrote the book from that perspective. And yes, you heard me talk about the undermatching, which happens in all schools, private, public, parochial, but it was something that was a particularly sore spot for me. Overlooking the HBCUs was Tim's soapbox because he went to Morehouse.
Yeah, so often, you know, we're going to talk about how we went about the process, but we interviewed a lot of families from throughout the country. I went to HBCUs, PWIs, lower socioeconomic scales, very affluent families, because this wasn't just us in a vacuum talking about, you know, our ideas and our admissions experiences. But one of the things that we found was many families would not even consider HBCUs. One thing, you know, I found in the book is there are generally three camps of parents as it pertains to Black parents. The first one, which is, you know, I went to HBCU, my family's going to HBCU, my money's going to HBCU, and that's the end of the story. That's why I'm up here like this. But anyway, and then there was another camp that says, you know, both parents went to PWI, predominantly white institutions. We think it's a better reflection of the diversity in the world, has better resources. So we don't think HBCUs could adequately prepare our students to go on and be successful. So we're not even going to consider those schools at all. The largest group is the third, which are going to consider both. However, the first two are the loudest. You know, just thinking about, you know, I was a couple weeks ago with a friend. He says, you know, I got two sons. I don't know where they think they're going to go, but my money's going to Morehouse. They can go wherever they want, but my check's going to Morehouse. And I know him. He's dead serious. But then through our talks, there were lots of other families that be like, you know, I just don't think those schools can adequately prepare, you know, my child to be successful or prepare them for the real world. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in a second. So
let me just piggyback on that one point, because again, I probably fall into that camp of, I went to independent schools, went to PWI, sent my kids to PWI, independent school right now, moved out to the suburbs, and feel like in many ways, I'm doing better. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, but now I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. And we were one of the few two black families on the block. And I'm asking myself, are my kids equipped to go to an HBCU? Now, my wife who went to Howard says they better be. But because I went to Wesley, we had that dynamic of we're not sure. So again, this is something I know a lot of you are experiencing when you send your kids to independent schools of, what are the cultural, financial sacrifices that we're making, and are we doing our kids more harm? Thank good. I know I wrestle with that all the time. Go ahead.
And well, you know, one more thing on this, and you know, Shereem, I'm sorry, I don't have to embarrass you on this. As we've gone through this process, we have lots of differences, and you know, I've tried to say, hey, there are a lot of great HBCUs. We have no preference in the book. Wherever you go to school, whatever's best for your family is fine. So we were making a trip back from Virginia, One of Shereem's friends calls him on the phone, says, hey, my son's thinking about schools. He's thinking about studying, this. What schools do you think he should go to? Shereem immediately fell into, he named 8 schools. He's like, oh, this school is good, this school is good, this school is good, this school is good. And then he hung up the phone. I said, you named 8 schools, and you didn't mention Delaware State, who has one of the best programs in that. Why is that? And he said, you know what? You're right. I did what was comfortable to me. I did what I knew. I did what was familiar. And he called his friend back, and he said, and the other part about it was his friend talked about, he's a biracial young man, his friend talked about him wanting to really express his black identity. And I said he's writing about his identity, and yet you, author of this book, at no point in time mentioned one HBCU. He said, you know what, you're right. He called him back and says, would he be open? He said, yeah, he'd absolutely be open. And then I had a smile on my face, and he's like, be quiet, shut up. But all that to say is we have to get outside of our comfort zone. And so as we went about this, there are lots of admission books that get into the how. How do I get into college? What are the timelines? What we wanted to get into was the who. Who's applying? The when. When should I be applying? We need this process to start earlier. Where? Is it close? Is it far? What type of institutions? And most importantly, the why. Why am I applying to this school? What is the reasons behind applying to whatever school that we're looking at?
So here you go. This is our baby. And we're very, very proud of it, primarily because we broke it up into 3 very important parts. The context, we wanted to address black families and many things that we believe, given the surveys that we sent out, the parent groups, focus groups that we had, black family, black parents, the choices we make now matter later. That matters a lot to me, right? Where are my kids living? What are they seeing on a day-to-day basis? Are they in an environment that's going to help prepare them best for college and for life? The second part was X factors. So the context, let's go back for a second. The context really speaks directly to a lot of things, the conversation about education, parenting, and race that we know our friends are having in their homes. The second part was about X factors. Tim, again, being the senior associate dean at Emory, understands what are the X factors that happen in the college admissions process. And we found that many people, black and white normally, but particularly black as we were speaking to, didn't understand how college admissions works, didn't understand X factors. Similarly, chapter 9 is sports, arts, and special talents. I have a son who's a recruited athlete, and I went through a process with him being a recruited athlete that I wanted to share, but also things that I learned as a parent, but also as a professional. And then the process part 3 is about the expectation for success timeline. The process is going to be the same for anyone, whether you're black, white, green, red, or yellow. And we wanted to make sure that we gave people different pieces for them to take from. We understand that not a lot of people read books from cover to cover, but what could you extract from this book that could help you? And again, we want it to be a conversation, and I know some people looking at chapter 3, this is the black hours, or what's called the power 3, the black Ivies. We felt that since there's Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, we wanted to make sure that we identified Morehouse, Spelman, and Howard. And we knew we were going to get flack for it. We want to hear from the Hampton folks, and the FAMU folks, and the Tuskegee folks. But hey, being provocative sells books, right? Why not? Why not? So we're glad that we're able to break it up into 3 sections, but to really give everyone a little bit of what they need depending on who you are.
And just to be clear, that Black Ivies chapter was written to highlight, which most people who know about Howard, Morehouse, and Spelman would say, okay, maybe they're the top HBCUs. There's some argument to be made. I don't think so, but yes, obviously there's some arguments that can be made. But it's really to bring attention that there are 97 other HBCUs that are often overlooked. And that as these millions of dollars are being poured into HBCUs, a lot of them are going to the same places, but there are a lot of HBCUs that are struggling. And so we wanted to shine a light that there were several HBCUs throughout the country. We also, have a chapter called In Our Opinion, where we share, based upon our experiences, this is what we think about, this process. And, I'll just set, out myself. It needs to be personal. needs to take place within the walls of the home. It needs to take into consideration what are the resources the family has, what are the needs of the child, things that happen and not just what you heard, what you think is going to happen, but really be personal in the process. And then we offer some suggested readings.
So again, given the surveys, the roundtables, we asked several parents different questions, particularly, what are the hopes and expectations for college admissions process for your child? Those of you who are here tonight obviously care about your children. You're sending them to independent schools or a quality public school. You're aware what the curriculum may be, but there's an outcome, there's an end game. And it doesn't have to be a name brand end game per se, but you want to make sure that your kid is going to the right school for the right reasons. So we wanted to make sure we asked families why they felt what they did. What college experience do you want for them? Many people will say, I want my kid to have something different from what they've been having in middle school and high school. And that's something that, again, we wanted to make sure we brought to the table. So we didn't write this book in a bubble, in a vacuum, Tim likes to say. No, we really did a lot of interviewing because I know how I feel fluctuating. I know how he feels pretty stern. But we wanted to make sure we got perspectives from other people who went to HBCUs and PWIs, and this is what came out. So we wanted to make sure that we talked about, particularly the last one, which was really again, talk about the Black NIG movement, the racial climate in America and your child's education. What does that mean to you? Where do you want to see them? How much are you considering their physical and emotional safety in elementary, middle, high school, and obviously college?
And then obviously we wanted to talk to counselors as well, because these are the individuals who are working very closely with the students, with the families, and we wanted to get their perspective. What were some of your experiences that they had with working Black families? Do you suggest, HBCUs in going through the process? And we had a lot of good conversations, and subsequently we had a lot of good conversations. We were in LA a couple weeks ago that provided a lot of good perspective. And then, which HBCUs are most familiar? Of the 40 or so college counselors, we said, which HBCUs you know about? They said Howard, Spelman, and Morehouse. And then we said, when did you visit them? Oh, I was in a conference in Atlanta, and I went to Spelman and Morehouse. I was in a conference in D.C., and I went to Howard. But when you were in D.C., did you not go up to Bowie State? Did you not go to the other HBCUs in the area? When you were in New Orleans, did you not, go? If you went to Tulane, did you not go visit Dillard? Did you not go visit Xavier? If you were in Nashville, if you went to Vanderbilt, did you not go to Fisk? Did you not go to Tennessee State? Asking these questions that, yes, if you were college counselors, and many college counselors, particularly at independent schools, have opportunities to visit a lot of colleges, but the fact that those were the only 3 that they could name on a consistent basis was problematic, especially if they are the ones primarily working with our students.
And then we'd ask this really provocative question. And again, if you can't tell by now, I stir the pot. And I said, hey, Tim, we're going to put something out there to parents and counselors particularly to make sure that we're all on the same page on how to educate Black children and Black families. And we went to several rooms, primarily, white counselors, that list 5 famous Black Americans and where they went to college. I'm going to toss it out to you guys. Who do you think they named? Hands, raise hands. Famous Black American went to college. Barack Obama. Where did he go to college? Woo! Occidental. He started Occidental, graduated from Columbia, Harvard Law School. What other famous Black American? Come on, because there's a lot of Black people in here. Yeah. Dr. King. And he went to Morehouse when?
Said when?
Yeah. Well, meaning 50 years ago, 60 years ago, right? Famous Black Americans right now, where they go to college.
Michael Jordan.
There you go. We got a lot of Michael Jordans going to North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Does anyone else know Black Americans went to college? Really? Kamala Harris. Where'd she go? Howard. We wanted to make sure that we put 80 or 85 famous Black Americans in our book and where they went to college, because we felt that it was Barack Obama in Occidental, it was Dr. King going to Morehouse, it was Kamala Harris going to Howard, it was Michelle Obama going to Princeton, it was Oprah Winfrey going to Tennessee State, and that was it. Where did Denzel Washington go to college? Fordham. Where did Sterling Brown, who's on This Is Us, where did he go to college? Stanford. Morgan DeBron. Anyone know who Morgan DeBron is? Black Blavity. serial entrepreneur out in Silicon Valley, Washington University of St. Louis. So we put, again, a slew of famous black Americans. Tristan Walker, who does the Bevel Company of Walker Products, went to SUNY Stony Brook. And we wanted to make sure that these were not the only names. Robert Smith went to Cornell. We wanted to make sure that these were not the only names in people's mouths. We learned a lot, but we wanted to make sure counselors, students, families were learning a lot, so we didn't have to look at the same people over and over again and say, okay, that person went to North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that person went to Morehouse, that person went to Columbia, and that was it.
What about sports and entertainment?
Oh, go ahead.
We here, come on.
So I feel, our famous black Americans are primarily in sports and entertainment. I wrote a chapter called What is Liberal Arts, and I forget the name of it. But the liberal arts is the luxury. So we can name Jay-Z, Beyonce, LeBron James. They didn't go to college, right? But in our country, celebrities are our royalty. And these who our kids are looking up to, many of us look up to them in a lot of different ways. I'm not gonna pretend that I don't love watching LeBron James play, and I was listening to a Jay-Z album coming up here. But we wanted to make sure, from a college experience, college admission standpoint, that we were not using them as role models per se. But Megan Thee Stallion, whether you like her music or not, she graduated from Texas Southern. Graduated. A lot of people don't know that. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't discriminate against people and what they choose to do in their lives. But if we're going to talk about famous black people in this country, we want to make sure we gave you where they went to college. So hopefully that could be something that your families, students can use as they project towards their college experience.
And the other thing that we'll talk a little bit more about why we have this list is we want to say where they went to college and the institution type.
Yes.
Because it was very important that we redefine success. So if you look at this list and you say who's the most successful person on here, are we talking about popularity? Are we talking about rising to the level of the president's office? Maybe Barack Obama's that person. But if you're talking money, then Oprah, and she went to Tennessee State. And Vice President Kamala Harris, not pictured, went to Howard. And then, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she went to Harvard. So there are multiple layers of success. And there's not just one institution that can get somebody to a successful place. And we want to be very clear that in these lists of 80 people, half of them went to PWIs, half of them went to HBCUs. Just so as counselors, families are having these conversations about what do you want? And we don't know what you want out of college. Success has to be determined of, is it getting into college? Is it finishing debt free? Is it getting a scholarship? It could be any number of things, but we want people to really think beyond the rankings, ESPN, where you win as a legacy, but what are the needs of the student and what schools could provide that?
So the takeaways from the book, again, is fundamentally to understand that HBCUs and PWIs should be considered in the college process, getting a better understanding of what that means. Secondly, understanding the role of diversity in admissions. How does that, as part of the X factors portion, how is that playing out? There's a big Supreme Court decision that's going to be made in several months about affirmative action. I think things are going to change. And you need to be aware of what those are. So although our book doesn't highlight the current events of it, it's not in real time, we do want to make sure that we address that, and in our second edition, of course, we will. Also, and then there's some differing opinions on this, but begin the process early. I believe that many black families don't understand, big sweeping generalization, how early the college counseling process begins. The courses you take in 7th and 8th grade oftentimes affect the courses that you're allowed to take in 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th grade, particularly in math, science, and foreign language because of the trajectory. So if you don't know that if you take you're not in an accelerator or honors math at one point, are you going to be allowed to take calculus as a senior? Not saying that needs to be the end goal for everyone, but you need to be aware of how the sequencing of courses work. So we want to bring awareness to the process so that you and your children can make the right and appropriate decisions for them academically, so they begin the process earlier and can have the success, the choices they want later.
And Shereem's being very, very nice. This was a point that I felt very strongly about, and he didn't feel this way 6 months ago. Thank you. I'm glad you came around. But too many people came to this process late. And he was like, nah, I don't want to say that. It's going to make people like they're on CP time. I was like, no. I said, I have too many friends who are calling me their senior year, talking about what do I need to do to get my child in college. And, you know, in my profession, there's nothing I can do with a senior. All I can say is meet your deadlines and proofread your essay. That's all I got for a senior. Because so much has moved along. And what you do in 9th, 10th, 11th grade matters. And a lot of these families, you know, didn't just want to say, oh, I just want to go to, you know, any college. Oh, I want my kid to go to Ivy. I can't do nothing for you senior year if that's the case. So we wanted people to know this process starts very early. You know, we would say, you know, middle school, but, you know, also it begins, you know, in the home, like, you know, just, you know, providing, you know, students with seeing college shirts, getting them on college campuses, wrapping their mind around what does college look like. And so that's something we wanted to do. And then, you know, really redefining success in this process. That, you know, a lot of the conversations that we had, and I was very surprised sitting up in my ivory tower at Emory for the past 20 years, the most families didn't care about rankings. They said, how much does school cost? Is my child going to be safe? How far away from home is it? You know, what, you know, academic majors do they have available to them? Of the almost, you know, 300 families that we talked to, there were only like 2 that were like, we want our students to go to Ivy League institutions. You know, one mom says, I want my son to play sports, and I want him to be within 2 hours so I can see him play baseball. That's what I want. Another mom was very clear, like, my daughter is going to play volleyball. In college, she's going to be a recruited athlete. I want her to have an open mind. You know, she wants to go to SEC school, but she's not going to Ole Miss. I'm not sending my daughter to Ole Miss. And these were just very upfront conversations the parents were having that weren't driven by rankings. They were driven by them as parents, and I want to put my children in the safest space.
So Tim, again, redefining success was a big thing for him. And again, I think I have adopted that primarily because I understood what he means, that success, and again, we say this as parents, first and foremost, that was our first slide, parents, educators. We understand that every child, black, white, yellow, or green, needs something different. But collectively, as parents, as the adults in this process, we have to redefine success and then share that with our children. So we've given you a quick overview of our book. We definitely hope that, I was joking with one parent earlier about, you know, her nose was in it pretty thick, and I was like, we appreciate that. If you haven't purchased the book, we have it outside for you, but we're open to answering any questions you may have. And we again want to make sure we thank Kathleen and Ken for your hospitality, and we appreciate you guys for your time, but we want to make sure that we answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
When you said, okay, my name is Wayne Gordon. Now, you guys had given a statement as far as affirmative action, see some changes coming through. Exactly what kind of changes are you looking at? I mean, I normally try to stay abreast of a lot of things, but I haven't been aware as far as.
So there are 2 Supreme Court cases against Harvard University, University of North Carolina right now about discriminatory affirmative action admissions practices. Where it's being challenged now is affirmative action still needed in higher education? Do students need to identify what race they are in order to be considered? One argument could be made that this isn't 1960, 70 when affirmative action was instituted. Another argument could say, well, how are we going to achieve racial diversity if you don't have to indicate that on their application? So the Supreme Court, I believe, in early 2023 is going to hear that case, because there are people who are, proponents of affirmative action.
And it's a very conservative court.
Very conservative court. So we expect that the changes that will be coming, to answer your question very directly, may remove race being, colleges being allowed to use race in their college admissions process.
Yeah, but affirmative action hasn't really benefited black people per se. If anything, it's expanded to a lot of different demographics, both racially as well as also sex-wise, more so than anything. It really has a benefit as to the extent that it has.
That could be challenged. I mean, again, and your opinion is valuable, but right now, the court case, to answer your question very specifically, is that affirmative action period is going to be heard in court.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Questions? Who has read the book? Who's purchased the book or read it? Jack, I know you got the book, team. I know you got the book. Appreciate it. Now that we've spoken about it, we're curious. How many of you are curious to learn more about the book? Why? What have we said tonight that has made you curious to learn more about the book?
I think that for me, I'm an immigrant who went to Williams College and
Little three.
yeah, and I'm raising three African American kids, and they go to independent schools, and I just don't feel like I have a good handle on any of this because my lived experience was so different from my husband's and theirs. So I think it's a great jump off for me to start to tackle some of these thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, that speaks directly, that's what we wanted to speak to. Someone who went to Williams, who, like you said, had a different lived experience than what you've been able to provide for your children, but now the game has changed significantly than when you applied to college. Anyone else? Questions or what makes you curious about the book at this juncture?
The rankings process. I think many of us grew up thinking that rankings were really, really important. And there's a lot of conversation now that is really minimizing the rank of the school versus, compared to the type of job or career you're going to pursue. So interested in hearing more about your thoughts on the ranking process.
Yeah, we spent not a lot of time talking about rankings, but we did talk about that most things that go into rankings have nothing to do with your child's experience is going to be at the undergraduate level. Most of it's right there. How big is the endowment? What's the student faculty ratio? What's the alumni giving rate? And just a lot of kind of variables that don't speak to what is that experience. And then also, at no point in the rankings do they consider the diversity of the school. And so, yes, a school can be ranked very high, but how diverse is it? Who is at that school? And if you look at the rankings, there's a direct correlation between the top rankings and how big their endowment is. And so, it just, what is the experience that you're going to have at school doesn't directly correlate. And then once you get into those subpopulations, and that's why we, asked the question, wanted to highlight understanding diversity within, higher education, that if you ask me with my Emory hat on, oh, what's the diversity at Emory? Oh, we have students from all 50 states, 100 countries around the world. And I'll just have this broad, sweeping, answer. But what you really want to ask is, what is the Black experience? And that's a totally different question. What is the graduation rate? Oh, the graduation rate in 4 years is 90%. What is it for Black students? Oh, that's a different number. And so really, thinking about what questions should you be asking that directly will affect the individual experience of your child at that school.
And just to piggyback on that in terms of the rankings and college admissions rankings, every year, sometime in the spring, the New York Times or another popular newspaper will publish that Harvard University had a 3% admit rate and Stanford had a 4% admit rate. And we see how selective these schools are, and it gets scary. Right? Oh my goodness, who's getting into these schools? And that so few kids are getting in. Digital electronic applications have ballooned application, pools. So they're getting more candidates because kids are saying, for $50, I can apply to Harvard, even though I have straight D's. And they know they're not getting in, we know they're not getting in, but the massive amounts of kids who are applying, but the beds actually on campus haven't changed. The amount of spots available for the freshman class makes it look more selective. So again, selectivity is very, very complicated. And there are some schools who aren't even submitting data for the rankings anymore because they know it's so skewed, or they just want to disguise it all. So we're asking you to redefine success. We're asking you not to put stock into the rankings. When I was in high school, I scoured the new U.S. News and World Report. As an adult, I'm much more informed of it doesn't mean that much as any of us ever should have thought. Anyone else?
Okay, back.
Definitely your candor in what you identified as why parents, the three buckets that parents fall into as to the type of school that they will suit their students. And for me, this will be our second child, hopefully you're now a parent. His process feels different than our oldest daughter, who had a stronger hand. So I feel that even though we do a great job here at the admissions office, they do an amazing job with our first daughter, I just feel that this process right now for my black son feels different, and I need to understand it differently, so that I can better support his choices and how he goes about taking the lead, where I feel that I might have to support him a little bit stronger than I did with my daughter, but I need to understand how to do that better and differently because he's not taking over the leadership.
And that's chapter 8, gender wars. That, just in working in admission, just particularly as it relates to black students, if you want to talk about the most selective schools in the country, let's say Emory's 22, all the way down to 1, the amount of black students, let's move athletes out of there, that can go there is just so small. It's so minuscule that, if a student gets into 1, they can probably get into all top 25 schools because they want that diversity on their campus. Whereas I was having a conversation with a counselor in DC a couple of days ago. For us at Emory, a smart black young lady's a dime a dozen. Like their bar is just so much higher. And I wanted to be very forthright in the admission process that the way an African American young ladies looked at this process and the way an African male looked at the process are 2 different things. And that's something to consider a factor. Also, I put forth the argument that one of the most valuable entities in higher education is the black male. You take the black male out of higher education, how many billions of dollars disappears? Instantly. What does diversity all of a sudden look like on that campus? And so black males are so sought after on these campuses, and that's something that I want families to know. Now, they obviously need to do the work. They obviously need to, have extracurricular activities and all those things, but to say a black female and black male are looked at in the same way in this process has been by no means the same.
Which partially goes back to the sports and entertainment piece, right? I make the argument that ESPN is arguably the greatest marketer of colleges we've ever seen. We have a ticker that goes across our television that tells you the score of every college football game, every college basketball game, NCAA tournament. And kids see that and, ooh, I want to go to that school. Why? Because they're on TV. Because they have, college game day. I want to run across the field and paint myself blue. Whatever. Bottom line is, they are marketing to us and to our children. And as Tim just said, you watch college football 48 hours from now on TV, and you're going to see a 11 and 11, 8 and 8 going to be black guys. And then the NCAA basketball tournament coming, you're going to see black guys. And they're making millions and gazillions of dollars for these institutions and their coaches. And that's why, whether you like the word or not, they're so often so highly valued.
So piggybacking off of that, I am a counselor at one of the other high schools in Bloomington, and I have quite a few aspiring athletes who, when you ask them where do they want to go to college and what they're looking for as far as major, as far as all the other factors, they say, I'll go anywhere that gives me an offer. What advice do you have for them?
How long do you got? Very quickly. When my son was 15 years old, he was offered a 50% scholarship to go to the University of North Carolina. He was 15, he's left-handed, he throws 90 miles an hour for baseball. I'm done. Let's go. They said 50 grand a year, I gotta pay 25, 5 hours away from home, go. 18 months later, we're in the middle of a pandemic, North Carolina, the pitching coach at North Carolina calls him, not me, and says, due to COVID, we can no longer honor your scholarship because we have kids who want to continue their eligibility. My now 16-year-old son is devastated. And me, college counselor dad, has no answers for him. Then, Daddy, I just want to go anywhere that makes me an offer. I said, son, we're not doing that. You're too smart, you're too gifted, we're not going just anywhere. But Daddy, this is what I want to do. So what do? Okay. University of Missouri gives him a full scholarship. Partial baseball, partial diversity, and he has a 30 ACT. Oh, come on. The coach scooped him up in a second. SEC baseball. He's thrilled. I really don't want to see my son in Columbia, Missouri, but that's just me. But he's happy, and I'm his dad. But then Missouri finishes at the bottom of the barrel of the SEC baseball, coach is on the hot seat, and he can leave at any time. And I say, you know what? I don't want you going there. My son's now a freshman at the University of Memphis, and he's thrilled to be there. Why? Because it's got a black coach, 10 of the 27 players are black, and he feels like he's finally being given a chance to do what he wants to do. And it's free, so that helps too. But all that said, my advice to you is this college recruitment game is a dirty game. College coaches leave at the drop of a dime. Do not, Tim said it best. We hear about all the glitz and glamour of the 5-star athletes and the name, image, likeness and what they're getting at the top. They're few and far between of them. Everybody else needs to keep their options open and understand their choices academically and athletically, because again, from my personal experience and from my professional experience, I've worked with athletes, it is not something that will nurture the student. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Although we're gonna have to talk later if that's okay.
Not a problem, I'm here. Okay, I know that it is 8 o'clock and we appreciate you guys and we didn't want to take too long, but we do want to give you an opportunity to purchase the book. We'll be signing them out there and answering questions. We're not leaving anytime soon, but we did want to say thank you for coming out. Kathleen, Ken, thank you so much for inviting us. And we hope that you'll meet us outside and buy a book and we'll sign it for you, all right? Thank you again, guys.
Have a great evening.